Welcome back, everybody, to another exciting episode of Aaron's Opinion, the podcast for blind people, where we speak about critical issues in the blindness community and all other issues from across the universe and galaxy. Today's guest is somebody who I never would have known of if you hadn't posted all those great reels on Facebook. Hannah Weymouth joins us blind and bored. I certainly hope you are, in fact, blind, but I certainly hope you are not bored. I understand that you basically use humor to educate and convey the messages of success that we like to have to the world. So basically, if you don't mind me asking, who's Hannah Weymouth? What's blind and bored? How do you use humor? Who are you? What's going on? This is going to be a blast. So basically, just walk through the life story. Tell me everything you want me to know and don't tell me anything you don't want me to repeat. Go ahead.
Okay, so I shouldn't give you my social security number, is what you're saying, basically? Okay, so
Definitely not.
is Hannah Weymouth. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that one out. But, well, I am a stay-at-home mom, and I was a photographer for 13 years, and I have always been legally blind. Since birth, I have cone dystrophy, and I was told at a young age when I was diagnosed at 10 that it would stay stationary. And I was kind of right at that, right at the mark of legal blindness. So I was like 20 to 50, I'd say, around. And so I personally didn't see myself as blind. I was kind of in denial about it most of my life. I was told that it was going to stay stationary. And I think I managed through most of my life. And I was a photographer and I did a lot of stuff. I mean, I still couldn't drive, but that was a pain in the butt. But then when I was 35, this was right around during the pandemic. So I started noticing that my vision was getting worse. And I was like losing peripheral, and it just kept kind of progressively getting worse. And then I realized, yep, they were wrong. So my vision was deteriorating. And then I had to start using a cane, and it was kind of a rough time. So I'd say I went through a good like 2 years of depression, I'd say. It was rough 2 years. And also my mom passed away during this time. So I was kind of grieving a lot of things all at once. And then at the beginning of 2023, I knew that I needed to pull myself out of this, kind of dark place. And, I had my mom in my ear too. She was a therapist, and, her just saying like, you need an outlet. You need some place to talk about this and to get it out, and it's going to make you feel better. So that's when I started. At the beginning of 2023, I started making videos. And in the beginning, I wasn't even talking about being blind. I was just making silly videos just because I was really bored. And that's what I named myself that, because I was blind and I was bored. And, stay at home moms and my kids are at school all day. And I needed something to occupy my time, basically. So I was making one video a day and I don't know. I think it scratched an itch that I had of creative outlet. And then when I started really focusing on the ins and outs of losing your vision and kind of turning everything into a joke, which is it's my coping mechanism personally. That's just kind of how I deal with things. I think I've always had, what is it called? Like gallows humor. So it takes something that someone else would say is a tragedy and I find something funny about it. And so I think one of the first ones I did was talking about I ran into a cabinet door. And then I've run into like face first into like a slightly open, slightly ajar door. And yeah, I could like sit down and cry about it, or I can find something funny about that. And I made a video making fun of it because I don't know, it's just gotten me through, this entire process of going blind. And I'm now at the point I can barely see anything. I can see a tiny bit out of my left eye, like a tiny little sliver. So that will probably be gone, within the next couple of years. And I keep finding new topics because there's just so much, ins and outs of being blind and the spectrum. And I've now been going through the whole spectrum of legal blind to now almost completely blind. And I don't know, every day I find a new way to make something funny. And I like writing parody songs, and I just really enjoyed it. It's been kind of like my own therapy. And every single video is about something that I personally experienced. And so a lot of it is kind of a video journal of my process, of this entire process. I'll look back on a video I did 2 years ago, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember when that happened, and that sparked something because I was at a dentist office and they did this or said this, and I made a funny video about it, and I'll look back on that. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember exactly what situation that was that sparked that video, and yeah, so that's about it.
Yeah, and I think to me it's really, really, really relatable because Aaron's opinion got started during 2020 during the pandemic too, around that same time. And I was also going through a lot of things at that time, one of which my guide dog was getting old and passing away that year, which did happen.
Um,
Yeah. So, and everything else that happened during 2020, well, that was 2020. But I think what you said is a very subtle thing that we need to find it within ourselves to have the courage to laugh at these various different things that happen in life. I think it's really important to be able to laugh
I
at the
agree.
right time. But this is not just an easy concept, Hannah. This is a very subtle thing, right? So
Mhm.
obviously, I don't specifically remember what videos I've already seen. I've seen some of your reels that float around. You're doing great, by the way. The videos are
Thank
great. You're
you.
really, your retention is really good on those videos. They're really together. So what is your whole philosophy about humor? And what I mean is this, it's oftentimes said by comedians, which although I love to tell politically correct jokes or really politically incorrect jokes, it's oftentimes said that humor is really always at someone else's expense. In other words, so I think the real hard thing for other people, especially sighted people to understand is how do blind people perceive humor? And how do you, Hannah, perceive humor? And Hannah, how do you create humor, making sure that the joke is on us and still in a good way, but still in a serious way? So really, how do you engineer your humor? That's what I'm really asking. That's a
That
very
is a
subtle
really
thing.
great question. Thank you. That's a really great question. And I think that comedy and humor really connects us all. And I think everyone can find something that they can laugh at. And hey, maybe my humor is not for everybody. I know, I've gotten some comments of people saying, this is not funny. This is a difficult thing we go through. And yes, it is. Being blind, going blind is difficult. It is a journey, and I've gone through all of these different stages, and it's been a wild ride. I say that all the time. It's been a wild ride. I do really want to always make sure that the joke that I am making is not from a sighted person's perspective of making fun of blind people. I'm making fun of myself because this is what I went through. So I ran into a door. So I'm going to make a video about the fact that I ran into a door. I love that people relate to my videos, and I think I have most of my followers are, in the blind community, because I always want to find where the thread is of this is my personal experience. I am joking on myself, not blind people as a whole. And yeah, and I just, and also if I can ever put in a thread in any video that is teaching anyone about the ins and outs of being blind in some kind of relatable fashion that sighted people can understand, then I love that. If I can ever get a sighted person to be like, stop for a second and be like, oh wow, yeah, that would be really tricky. And that's interesting. And I never thought about it like that. And if I can, in whatever humorous way that I do it, if I can get anyone to in the sighted world to understand, I think it makes us all more relatable, because again, anyone could lose their vision at any point, and you could become disabled at any point. So I think it's good for non-disabled people to find some way to understand that we are just people and we laugh at things too.
Absolutely. Once, because I don't know how much of my background you have or haven't looked into on Facebook and the things I do around the community, but one of the things I do is I'm basically an online lecturer. I teach English as a second language, and I'm a bilingual English-French guy. Once I was working with a student and he asked me a really good question. He said, what would happen if there was some magical cure, the student said, and he meant it in a good way, where we could just eliminate disability and eliminate blindness. And I said, well, that wouldn't really work. We need people with disabilities in society. We need to be different in order to survive. Being different, as far as I'm concerned, is a survival skill. Then I was speaking to a student who happened to also be a medical doctor, and he said a line that I always like to use in my own life to describe everybody else. I say, everybody has ability. and everybody has disability. So when I see people in public, I always think of people as liabilities. I always say, wow, those, everybody's disabled. There's always a liability. And really, the longer you talk to somebody, the more you find out that they mostly are disabled and not able. At least that's what I'm noticing. It's all these different silly things. So I tend to, and I have to work on it in my own life. I try, I'm 34 years old, so I try in my life to, sometimes I have to get over certain things that people do or say, or, one of the hardest things, and I'm not going to tell you exactly what it was just to be on air, but there were some experiences that I wanted to have in my past. And I think one of the hardest things that I've had to do is to move forward. So I think using humor to move forward from things is a very important thing and a very subtle thing, But
Yep.
so let's really kind of dig in and debunk some of the stereotypes that you've researched. So as you develop your humor about your own humorous life, what are some stereotypes that you seem to have discovered that sighted people think of blind people? How do you debunk them, and how do you use humor? So kind of give me some of your material and show us how it works.
One particular topic I've made several videos about is that people don't talk to the blind person. They talk to the person that is guiding them. And I'm still in the process of learning how to be blind. That's kind of one of my jokes too, is that I suck at being blind. I'm learning every single day. I'm definitely not somebody to be like, oh, look at her, she's got life figured out. No, I don't at all. I'm not very independent. I still rely on people guiding me and stuff. Luckily, I have a bunch of kids and a husband, so they help me out a lot. But I've noticed out in public that, yeah, people will talk to the person that's guiding me and they won't talk to me at all. And I always kind of wonder, I always try to think about things from the other point of view of like, do people really need eye contact? Is that what it is? I mean, I'm usually wearing sunglasses when I'm out. So, but then again, like everyone at the pool is wearing sunglasses and a lot of people can't see it. So I'm not really sure why it is. And a lot of people think that blind people also can't hear, which is very bizarre to me. I've made a lot of videos about that topic because I do experience that a lot. Or, people reach out to shake a blind person's hand and they just really don't think about it. Those are a lot of awkward moments that I've had out in the world. And, or someone saying, hey, can you sign this? It's right here. And I'm like, okay, well, that means nothing to me, but thanks. There's just little things that I know just people just don't think about. It's difficult for sighted people to relate because honestly, I think they don't really want to think about what it's like to be blind. It's a very scary thing for most people. So, anytime I can even try to get someone to laugh in any kind of relatable way, then I feel like I'm doing a service.
Certainly, yeah, yeah. You can do a lot of material with the sign language thing, trying to convey
Oh
that blind.
yes, oh,
That
sign
is
language.
such a misunderstanding, and it's so unfair to the deafblind who do sign.
Yep.
I think that's the confusion. There are some blind people who sign, but not all people who are blind sign. So that's a very subtle one. That's a very pervasive stereotype that blind people need sign language.
Oh, and
Me.
describing things. That's another aspect of something I've had to really kind of train my family and friends into is the describing things. And it's a skill. I mean, people aren't really good at describing things if they are not used to doing it. And so when I'm asking what something looks like, I will, I'll have five different people say five different things. And that gets confusing as a blind person of trying to rely on the sighted people around you. Sometimes I now just start using an app instead because everyone's vision is different. People will view one color as five different shades of that color or different versions. And I'm like, okay, that's pinkish orange. No, it's purplish orange, like purplish pink or whatever. It gets very confusing when you have so many different people, the way that they view things.
It does, certainly. If you want color description, by the way, let's really be politically correct and really dig into stereotypes. You should ask women to describe
Yes,
color.
I have a video about that too.
So here's the thing, that's actually true. Women do perceive color differently than men. That's not a stereotype. That's a true thing. The theory is that women were responsible thousands and thousands of years ago. Women were responsible for knowing about plants and knowing about colors of things to survive. So typically women are more observant of color in the environment than men.
Yep, makes
And
sense.
but see, you can do humor about that, but you kind of cannot do humor about that because that's a factual thing. Women really do perceive color better than men. So that's a fact, not a perception, you know.
But you may
Yeah.
have a lot of men arguing that because, you know, as I have found over the years of making these videos, people
Hmm.
can argue about anything.
Yeah, but I try to not argue. Well, if something's a fact, I try to not argue. I mean, I try to argue and articulate opinions, but opinions are not facts. And there are certain facts that are facts. You know, a fact's a fact. You know,
Well,
at
my
least.
particular video about this, it was talking about color, but it's also talking about how women describe things better.
Hmm.
And I had a little, you know, clip of this was based on my sister. She was describing a shirt to me and she described it in full detail of the lace of it's like a plum color and full detail. Then switch over to my husband. And this is me playing the roles because it's a comedy skit. So then my husband, he looks at it and says, it's a purple shirt. And that was
Yeah.
the joke. That
Yeah.
he does not
Exactly.
know how to describe things very well.
Right, because and it's a very interesting thing, and it's accurate because a man's not going to care about the tassels or the decoratives or the little, you know, I don't even know the
The
word
shape
for
of
it.
it, how it fits, yeah, all that
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Yep.
Men don't because I don't want to wear your shirt. I don't care about that. That's why. So it's not of importance. That's another good one. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, descriptions. That's a lot of fun, and that is really interesting. All right. So, the sign language stereotype. What are some other huge stereotypes that you have unfolded in your
Um,
humor?
I think one of the main ones is that I think people think blind people are very unaware of anything, and I obviously there's a lot of things that we don't know visually that are happening around us, but like we can hear things happening around us. We can hear people moving around us. We can hear someone that's coming up close to us. And I always feel like there's this weird perception that blind people are in their own little world and like they don't know anything that's happening around them. And I just don't feel that way personally. I feel that I'm very aware of things happening around. And, you know, if I don't know what it is, then I'll ask somebody. I clearly hear something is going on over there. So what's that? What's happening over there? Because I'm hearing something happening over there. And I feel like sometimes people are surprised by that I'm like, you know, the blindness doesn't affect my hearing personally. I have pretty good hearing, so I can hear what's happening around me, or I can sense when somebody's near me. Also, you know, that whole thing of like I can feel when someone's getting close to me, and you can sense when someone's moving something around. It's just all these little things like using your other senses. And I think that a lot of sighted people forget that you have other senses and that we use all of our other senses to create the information that we need. And yes, we're missing one aspect of these sensory things, but we have all of the other ones. There's a lot involved, you know?
Yes, certainly. That is very, very accurate. Yeah, and I think the other big one that I try to tell my students is that no, being blind does not mean you hear better.
Yeah.
It just means that you can't see, or even in that, it's a spectrum. You know, that's why I think I've come to understand that blindness is so hard for other people to understand
Yes.
because there's such a depth of spectrum. You know, I've had
Yes.
other people on the show over the years, you know, some of them. I don't think I've ever interviewed anyone who's deaf, but you know, I've interviewed some people who, you know, have, you know, cerebral palsy or other, you know, hidden disabilities that are a little bit that there's simply a more narrow spectrum where either
Hmm.
you have it or you don't. And I'm not saying it's not an issue. What I'm saying is that when there's issues of spectrum, it's very hard for people to understand something if there's a lot of diversity with it. If there's a lot of
Yeah.
variation, you know, that really freaks people out, you know.
Yes.
And probably when I was growing up, you know, it probably happened to me a lot more growing up. It's just when you're a little boy, you know, I grew up in the 90s and early 2000s when there was a lot of changes going on and there was a lot going on in our country in those years. But when I was growing up, I just ignored a lot of stuff because that's what children do. They ignore. Or if something upset me, if someone discriminated against me if I was growing up, you know, my parents would just say, well, these things happen, you know. Now that
Yeah.
I'm 34, now I notice when it's discrimination. That's the thing. The older you get, the more you notice. These little, you know, the little things matter a lot more. in some ways. And then in other ways, the bigger picture matters a lot more than the little things. I just think, well, what's the bigger picture, right? Do I have a podcast today or not? Do I have my students coming today or not? You know,
Yes.
what's for dinner next week? At some point I care 1,000 times over, but then in other ways I've had to kind of tune stuff out and say, oh, well, they probably have their own issues that they're dealing with.
Yes, I do
Um,
always think that.
well, good. Have you ever, because I've experienced this in my own life, Hannah, have you ever had somebody, and I'm sure you have you ever had somebody like deny your blindness? In other words, insist that you're sighted even though you definitely are blind? Have you ever experienced that one? That's a very common thing with content creators.
Yes. Yep. I'll get, most common one is that like, cause in a lot of my videos, I'm wearing my regular glasses and, it's, if you're blind, why are you wearing glasses? I mean,
That's
I have no
really hard to
problem.
explain. That
It's
is
really
so
hard.
hard to
Yeah.
explain that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's when I answer. I don't mind answering
Hmm.
people's questions. And so I always, say I have a little sliver of vision in my left eye and the glasses help. And I just recently, made a analogy about that, where, if people still are referred as blind or as bald, even if they still have some hair, like, well, it's the same concept. So we can still
It's
have some
similar.
vision.
It's similar, except for the fact that when somebody is bald, they chop off all their hair just so that they can be bald because they don't want the patches. See,
Well, I'm thinking of like,
yeah,
George Costanza from Seinfeld. He has a whole
got
strip of
it.
hair in the back, and yet he still would say he's a bald man. You know what I mean? A lot of people related
Yeah,
to that, and I felt like
right.
in any way to get sighted people to understand the idea of a spectrum.
Yes, yes, that's a very good analogy to use, but it's not. Yes, I got it, but it's not quite the same spectrum. It's not quite the same. You are right with that particular actor and that particular character, but in most cases that I've seen, when men want to be bald, they just shave their whole head because they don't want even a little bit of hair. Either you're super super hairy like me, and you have a whole head of hair, which I do, or you're bald. So I don't know. That's
That
happens.
is a common
Yeah.
comment that I get, though. And
Hmm.
yeah, and I have no problem explaining it, but it does seem to be a difficult concept for people.
The glasses thing. Back to the glasses. Why do you wear glasses if you can see? Right? Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I say, and I tell people, well, I wear glasses because my eyes work a little bit, so the glasses help. And I also tell people that if a blind person is wearing glasses, it means they probably can see a little, or else they wouldn't need the glasses or wear them necessarily. But these are all really, really tough things to unfold. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. What are some other ones? Some other huge topics that you want to cover that you've
Um,
dug into? I know it's kind of hard for you to think of it. Let's see. We've covered because we're going to be all over the place today with the sign language, the asking for help, the colors, the spectrum. What are some other things? Yeah, that you've
Well,
looked at.
there's a lot of things that I have learned. So I give a lot of grace to people that don't know anything about blindness. And honestly, a lot of people I've run into that had never seen a blind person in their entire life. So sometimes I feel like I'm a novelty character when I'm out in public, and I know people are staring at me sometimes. And even if I can't see it now, I did in the process, like when I started using a cane, I could still see like straight ahead of me, but I couldn't see anything like around, down below. All my peripheral was gone, but I could still see straight ahead of me. So when I was using a cane, I could see people staring at me, and that's something I had to just get adjusted to and acknowledge a lot of people don't ever see blind people. They don't know anything about blindness. And that's why I really don't mind answering questions about it, because I think it's good to educate people. And there's a lot of things I didn't know about blindness when I could see better. And I didn't know, I had learned to use a cane, but I was like, well, I see good enough. I don't need to use a cane. So, I didn't know. I had to learn one time how to guide a blind person. I had no idea how to do that. So a lot of stuff I learned when I was younger, when I didn't think I needed any of that education. I'm so glad that I learned it when I did, because I didn't know that I was going to be almost completely blind by the time I was 40. I did not know that was going to happen. So I'm really glad I learned all those things, because all of it is a learning process. And I've had to, figure out how I need people to help me, because, people don't automatically know what to do. They don't know how to help you. And until I could then figure out how to help myself and then how to ask other people how to help me, they had to wait for that. And that took a bit of a process of me learning it would be really nice if somebody would tell me, like, when they pull out a chair, tell me what direction I'm going to be sitting, because I don't want to sit here and have to grope around for the chair. Or when I get out of the car, am I headed toward the front of the car, or the back of the car? Just like little things like that, I realized that I was having some issues with. Or, teaching people how to guide me. And I had to learn that and then to be able to teach other people, all those kinds of things. So I make a lot of videos about that, of like, things you shouldn't do to a blind person. And this is all just based on my own experiences, or things that I like that people do. I like it when people describe a lot of things. I like it, when, I'm blanking now. Describing things is a huge thing. I really like when people describe things. I personally am like, you can never say too much. Like audio description, I love it, and I always want them to say more, and I get like annoyed when they don't say enough. That kind of thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's kind of pivot a little bit. So before you completely lost most of your vision, you worked as a photographer. So that's a pretty specific thing, by the way, working as a photographer for a career. I mean, everybody does it as a hobby now, but what made you interested in photography originally, and what type of photography were you interested in at one point?
I was an artist, so I went to college for art. I painted, so that was mostly my medium. I painted and drew and stuff like that. But then as I got older, I then started becoming obsessed with taking pictures like all the time. I always had a camera with me, just taking pictures. And actually my older sister is a photographer, so she kind of like, helped me get into it as well. And then when I started having kids, I then was like, I could actually do this like as a side job. I was a stay-at-home mom, so on the weekends I could be a photographer. So I kind of just started, and I was doing things like maternity photo shoots and family photo shoots. And then one person I knew asked me to photograph their wedding. And that was such a big deal to me. And it was very difficult, but I loved it. And I just realized that I just fell in love with not only photography, but the interacting with people. And that's probably one of the main things that I miss about it, is just getting to meet new people and having this creative outlet. And so I did mostly family, newborn. I did weddings. So once I started my photography business, that lasted for about 13 years, and I was doing pretty good. I was busy every single weekend. I usually had like 4 photo shoots a weekend. Maybe, and like in a year, I'd probably say I did like 4 weddings. Um, but yeah, I really, really enjoyed it at the time. And so the pandemic hit, and when I had to stop doing that, it was very devastating. And then when I realized my vision had gotten so bad that I couldn't even really see through the viewfinder on my camera anymore. And I was like, yeah, I need to stop doing this, or at least I need to stop doing photography in the way that I was doing it before. So yeah, that was kind of a very sad process of having to quit doing that, because I really, really loved it and I really miss it.
Yeah, it's fun. It's very artistic, and you can go to cool events and meet interesting people,
Yeah.
and really, they say that, what's the saying? A photograph can be told in 1,000 words, or 1,000
Yeah.
words can, something to that effect. It's very
Hmm.
true. There have been I mean, luckily you were taking pictures of happy things, but there have been some famous photographs that have been taken in history that are very unhappy moments, but very famous. So, that's all very interesting. Yeah, yeah. I don't know. Have you ever networked with other blind people who used to be photographers? I wonder if there's like a group out there for people who are still interested in photography as an art form but are blind. I'm kind of curious about that. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm in a lot of groups on Facebook, and I think I've had a few people say that they used to do photography. And I've had a lot of people say, you can still do photography. I you know That's true. Of course, that's true. There are blind photographers. It's a mindset for me. I would have to change my mindset about it, because what I did before, I can't do that before. And I don't, part of me is like, well, I'm not sure I can really appreciate in the same way when I can't see the outcome. So like, I liked editing photos. I liked creating the perfect picture. Um, and now I can't do that. So I think maybe I'm not going to find the same amount of joy that I did in it before. So, but yeah, I would be interested if anybody else, either used to be photography or still are. And it's something I definitely want to pick back up eventually when I kind of get past that, I say, the visual mindset, because I think sometimes I still have the visual mindset that I have a hard time getting away from. and just thinking about things differently and doing things differently. And I would love to pick back up painting and just doing it in a different way. And I used to paint, I strive to paint realistic things. I don't think I can really accomplish that anymore. But I could get into abstracts. I do miss painting. So that's one of the other things that I'd love to get back into.
There's a lot of art that's very tactile. That's a really cool
Yes.
art form too. You could get into tactile art as your version
I've
of,
thought
of a
about that.
photograph.
I keep trying to find a new hobby. I was like, I might try like clay art. I did that for a bit. I have tried whittling.
Hmm.
I don't know, like sculpting. Yeah, I
You
really
could
would like to try
probably,
something.
if because the mindset that I would have with you is like, if you already have the arts background, if your brain is already set to that, then you would be able to sculpt things and build things out of clay and still produce a
Hmm.
picture just differently. That's what
Yep.
I would say. Don't let the vision stop you. You can still participate in art, making little clay things, making little creative, little creatures or little, well, creative anything. That's
Yes.
really creative. So that's something you could definitely do. And then you could still take a picture of it and, I don't know, encourage people on, if you have a large Instagram following, that type of thing works. I think the
Yeah.
photographers now are the people that make a living doing that are people who have massive followings on, TikTok and Instagram.
Yes.
But most of the photographers now, I mean, unless you're like working for a company, but if you're a freelancer, you're just doing it for a hobby mainly, with the hope of making a little bit of money just to pay for the equipment, which is what most of
Yeah.
art is. Most of art for people is a hobby, not a full-time gig anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and now the making the videos has kind of turned into my hobby. I still want to try other things, but making the videos has kind of turned into that for me. And like each video, I kind of see it as its own little art project.
It
And
absolutely is.
yeah, and so that's why I kind of say like it's scratching a little bit of an itch that I have that I can get some kind of creative outlet. And I've gotten more into like music, and I really want to learn to play an instrument. I can play the piano a little bit, but I really want to learn to play the guitar or ukulele or something. And I love
Hmm.
writing parody songs. And I'm not a great singer, but I don't really care. I still do it. But so I've
What
been
about,
getting more into that.
yeah, absolutely, Hannah. Absolutely. What about the banjo? Can you play the banjo?
I have one, but I don't know how to play it. I would love to. I
The
love string
reason
instruments, and I don't know how to play any of them.
So the reason why I brought up the banjo, it's a instrument, as you know, the history of it. It actually came from Western Africa, actually. That's where it comes from originally. The reason why I brought up the banjo is I always find, now I played flute, classical flute for many years of my life.
Oh.
And I always find, though, looking back on it, that the banjo is both one of the most beautiful, entertaining, and ominous sounding instruments. It has a very intimidating sound, and there's a lot of really ominous different things that can be done with a banjo that can really convey emotion. And also, the banjo is used in a lot of bluegrass music and soul, like folk songs and music that brings us together as people, not push us apart. So that's kind of what it
Hmm.
means. So the banjo has a lot of spirituality, and there's some incredibly beautiful things that you could do. Take a cover of a song and where you would play piano, just play banjo, and it would be just absolutely, it
It
could
would
be
be awesome.
ridiculously beautiful. It's
I love the
ridiculously,
banjo.
yeah, that's a really cool instrument. Yeah, ukulele is good, especially if you like singing, the Hawaiian music and music
Yes.
from, the music from, the word is escaping me now. The Pacific music from the island nations of the Pacific.
Polynesian, yeah.
Polynesian, thank you. That's the word I was trying to find, that word Polynesian. Yeah, if you really like Polynesian music, the ukulele would be good. But yeah.
Well,
Um,
segue into that, I also,
mhm.
on top of the photography, I used to dance, and I would do belly dancing as well as Polynesian dancing. And me and my
Okay.
sisters had a dance group, and we performed all over the area. We were performing at festivals, and
Oh
we did
wow.
private parties, and it was a lot of fun during that time. I was also doing that on the weekends,
You're
and
very artistic. Okay, you obviously have a
thank
lot
you.
of ability as an artist, right? If you're able to do dance, and art and have this appreciation, you're obviously a very artistic person. You're obviously very gifted artistically.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much. That was another thing I having to stop dancing. As my vision was getting worse, I was getting very dizzy, and
Yeah.
I just my balance. I've had to kind of relearn balance without vision, and that's been kind of a tricky mind process. So I'm like, I just don't. Maybe eventually I could get back to dancing, but right now I just feel like God, if I tried, I probably would fall over or something.
Right, right, absolutely. Well, I'm sure that many blind people would struggle with that in some ways, but there are definitely blind dancers. There are definitely people
I'm
that still
sure,
like
yeah.
that. Yeah, you would just have to talk to them and say, hey,
Yes.
how do you make this accessible? How do you do this? Yeah, I don't know. That's why, the funniest thing about all this is just simply going to Facebook, the greatest medicine in some ways. Just going to Facebook and researching a group to see if it even exists, blind this,
Yes.
blind that. You'd be surprised what you can pull out of the woodwork, things that you would never think exist. And then you're like, oh, that person does it? Oh, really? Oh, yeah, I
Right.
am friends with them.
I'm in two separate groups for my eye disease, which is a very rare retina eye disease. But I'm in two separate groups for cone dystrophy and cone rod dystrophy, and it's awesome. I love, and I try to give people advice whenever I can. There's a lot of parents that will come in there and say, my
Hmm.
child is just recently diagnosed, and do you guys have any advice? And I'll try to give them advice based on my experience from when I was a kid. And there's a lot of people that still have decent vision the way that I would say that I did before. And I always then say, not to scare people, I'm probably one of the worst case scenarios. The fact that I am almost completely blind. Cone dystrophy, a lot of people are not this far blind as I am, but so I'm like, I don't want to scare anybody,
Oh,
but
wait a minute. You mean you really are blind?
yes, pretty blind.
I
Yeah,
had to
I
jab in
haven't
some
been faking
humor
it, I
there.
promise. I know I've been accused of faking it, but oh man, this would be like a really long con job if I was faking it.
You know
I
what's
was
the
like, man, I'm
saddest?
really committed to this bit, guys. I'm really committed.
So we know that Hannah's really blind. You know what the saddest thing that I've seen that is really deeply fascinating is all the people there have been several cases where people do fake it though. That's why people still
Ugh,
believe that we fake because
I
there have
know.
been a couple
I don't
fakes.
really understand. What is the benefit? We don't. It's not like we're getting benefits from this. I don't know. Like it's really
Well,
not that beneficial to be blind.
what I'm saying is, and there was a guy. Now I forget his name. I'm not going to say what the name is. You'll probably know it, and please don't name drop it. But there was the guy. I think he was from the Carolinas, who pretended to be blind just to get the benefit, just to get financial benefits. So that was one of the
Oh
reasons.
no.
Yeah, yeah. I forget what his name is. Eventually, as you probably remember, his wife turned him in. Eventually, um, so
Wow.
that's
And then
pretty.
there's the crazies that like there was some lady, I think she was on Dr. Phil, and like she
let's
blinded
let's
herself.
let's change please let's not drop that
Okay.
let's not name drop quite that far. Okay,
Okay.
that's okay.
Lady, she
um
blinded herself, and I was like,
yeah,
what on earth?
I saw too a story where, and then I asked one of the other people I interviewed about it. I asked them if it was true, and she thought it wasn't. I saw a story where somebody like had like a I don't even know what to call it, where somebody had like a twisted obsession with being blind.
Oh,
Um,
weird.
yeah, and then she poured. Now I have to push a pause button in my mind here and say, so listener, you guys at home, I don't know what the truth is to this story. I have been told by somebody else, not Hannah. I've been told by somebody else that this story is not true. This not true story that I heard was that the person poured like they poured like dish Drano or some like chemical like that into their eyes
Yeah.
to become blind. You probably heard about that, where she went to the psychologist and she told her psychologist or therapist to please pour the chemicals in my eyes just so I can be blind. Now I don't know what the truth of it all is. I do remember that I spoke to somebody else about it in the blindness community, and they insist that it's all not true. So I don't know what the truth is. I will also say that there was and we're not going to name drop it, but because you probably know who it is. There was another very famous YouTuber who's a woman who's blind, and she had somebody come to her channel who claimed that they were blind, but it was very obvious that they are not. So that's also a big thing too. There are people out there. So the reason why we're kind of going down this little rabbit hole is that there are people who are not always in the best mental condition, and they seem to want to
Yeah.
so that's all we're saying here, guys, is that it's never okay to fake being blind. And if somebody does, I would be really polite to that person. I would be really kind to them because I would realize in my heart that that person is really not well and
Yeah.
really not stable. Um, I don't know. It's like people have asked me like, do you want to be sighted? Like what would happen if you were sighted? And I tell you the most interesting thing about it is that if you're a blind person your whole life, now I was born with glaucoma. Um, I think in fact, I know it wouldn't work if we were magically able to be sighted, mainly because we wouldn't have the social skills or the social understanding of a sighted person to be sighted. So it wouldn't work in my opinion, but I don't know. Have you ever given any thought to that? Yeah.
I've heard this question being
Hmm.
asked, and also the question of, is it better to have been born blind or to go blind later in life? And that's a constantly debated topic. And I think my perspective is hard because, I did go from, now I didn't have 20/20 visions, but I went from having a decent amount of sight to now being almost completely blind. So, I mean, if there was offered a magic cure or to go back to even what my vision was before, yeah, of course, I would take it in a heartbeat. But
That's interesting.
I have learned a lot since becoming this blind, and I'm not sure if I would go to 20/20 vision because I, just like you said, I've never experienced that. So I don't know how overwhelming that might be. And I think a lot of the stuff, the art stuff that I've done was because that my vision was not that great. I think I always saw things in more of a two-dimensional kind of way. I had an easier time putting it on a canvas, and doing photography, I never got bogged down by the tiny details of something. I saw the bigger picture. And I think a lot of it made me the way that I am, and informed a lot of my art. So in what you mean, I totally understand that, of like, I don't think I'd want to have perfect vision because I don't even know what that's like. And you're right. I wouldn't even know how to deal with that. I feel like, would you have headaches all the time? Like, I
I
don't
don't
know.
know.
It seems overwhelming to me.
It would be, and it wouldn't work. So it doesn't do society any good to worry about it, is what I try to tell people. I try to say,
Well,
well,
and then the
let's,
back
yeah.
and forth, yeah, and the back and forth of the whether it's better to be. I've gone back and forth with this too because it's been such a difficult learning process of all the things you have to learn to be blind and to function normally. I wish that I would have learned this at a young age. I wish that so sometimes I do have those moments of like, I would be so amazing at all this stuff already if I were born blind, or this blind, and or if I started losing vision at a younger age. I would have already known all these skills, but I'm still right in the beginning process of this, and I'm still learning every single day of, better cane skills and different tips and tricks and stuff. I'm learning from other TikTok people and stuff. So I'm definitely not one of those blind people that fully know what they're doing. That's what I'm saying.
Nobody, here's a little secret. Nobody knows what they're doing. And that's
Well,
another
you know
subtle
what I mean.
thing.
Like the blind people they've been doing this for a lot longer than I have. I don't have as much practice.
Yeah, you need more practice. So do I. So
Yes.
do we. But what I'm saying is intellectually, nobody knows what we're doing. If we knew
Yeah.
what we were doing, we wouldn't be doing it, is the interesting thing to look at. I mean, all these new weird social trends and social changes, all this
Yeah.
new strange stuff that's going on in our life. And there's some things that are going on that I'm really making me wonder about society, where society will be. I wonder
Hmm.
just as much about where we will be than where we are, and then the other times I wonder,
Yeah.
where are we now? But in other times, I don't wonder where we are now at all because I see our behavior from the past. So it's very hard to tell what the future holds, for the blindness community. But yeah,
Well, one thing that I've been really refreshed about is technology. And I
absolutely.
didn't have all the things that we have now. I didn't have growing up. And I wish I did. And the apps that I love and that I use on a daily basis, I'm like, I can't live without them now. And I'm like, man, I wish I had all this when I was younger.
Yeah, but that's society. Society wasn't ready for it then. What year were you born?
85.
Yeah, you were, but that's what I
I
thought.
just
You
turned
were,
40.
yeah, you were born in 85. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you're a few years older than me, 6 years older. I mean, that's still a pretty similar generation. I mean, it was still a
Hmm.
fairly similar time period. It's just when I was growing up in the 90s, things were really starting to take off and the tech was starting to really develop. And then I think by around 2006, I think that's when the tech really took off. That's when I really noticed, you know, but yeah, there's some really, really interesting people and some really interesting trends out there for sure. Yes, that is all
Definitely.
all really accurate. You've built up quite a following on TikTok over the years, obviously. So where is your audience, by the way? What can you tell me about the dynamics of your audience? What are some of the things you've been noticing?
Well, I'm on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. And you're right. TikTok is where I have the most following. And I don't know this for a fact, obviously, but I think there's more blind people on TikTok. I follow a ton of blind people. And, I feel like that's the majority of my audience. And I really appreciate when anybody on there finds any of my content relatable or funny. And, because when I make videos, I'm kind of trying to make myself laugh, or I'm trying to work through a difficult thing that just happened to me. So when anyone says they relate to it, it warms my heart. It makes me so happy. And I found a really great community on TikTok. Blind Talk, I love everyone I come across. Everyone is so nice. Everyone comments the nicest things. And I've really, really appreciated the community that's on there. I really, really like it. Now, lately, I've gotten a quite a bit of following on Facebook, just all of a sudden, actually within the last week, which was really awesome. I was very excited about it. I don't know if it was from my Christmas video or it might have been from my analogy video, but suddenly this video was getting a lot of views and I was getting a lot of followers. I was like, yay! I don't have
Yeah.
very many on Instagram. That one's always been pretty slow. I think I only have like 400 and some on there. And then YouTube, I get probably the weirdest comments. I think a lot of kids are on YouTube. I always think that if I get like a weird or rude comment, I usually assume it's like a 12-year-old.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's interesting because when I put up videos for Aaron's opinion, it's not, I mark it as not for kids.
Yes, I do too. Yeah.
So there should not, I mean, I would be interested to learn how these children are finding out about these videos that they really should not be watching at that age. If it's not for children, it really isn't.
Kids are watching YouTube all the time. I mean, I have a bunch of kids, so I mean, yes, they find it anywhere, and they go from a video game thing to then suddenly they stumble on your video, and then it's like, middle schoolers are like, why do you feel the need to comment? I don't know. Just keep on scrolling,
Well,
buddy.
well, I think so. When I was that age, I had a lot of fascinations with older adults who were successful. So I would want to ask questions too. So I think
Mhm.
that's a lot of it is I think that there's something magical about not talking to your mother or father, not talking to your family. I think there's something very mystical and mystifying about speaking to somebody who has a following and you want to see what it's like to talk to somebody that you're not related to, basically, is what I'm saying. I think that's a lot
Yeah.
of it. I think they want to reach out and practice. And to some extent, I appreciate it. I think there are some of these younger
Yeah.
teens who are trying to develop their social skills and go out in the wild and test things and see what happens when you go up to somebody. And, I don't agree with it. I proudly and strongly refuse to speak to children online. I refuse to do it. So children are not allowed to comment on my stuff. So don't even try. I will delete the comment if I find out that a child, I actually had to deny somebody from coming to the podcast because they're only 17. So I'm really strict about it. You have to be 18 to be on this podcast.
Mm.
And I'll defend that to my grave. I'm not taking risks. So, but I do think that as time goes on, there will be more times where, well, they say, well, that child, they still got onto the show or they still did this or they still talked or they still, I mean, if some, I mean, the trick is if I can't tell that they're a child and they're being appropriate and asking a really good, like if they ask a really good question, that's one thing. So I kind of appreciate that. On the other, yes, they should not be saying rude things, but sometimes when you're, a venting teenager, you have to vent at something. And, I kind of understand where a
Oh, yeah,
teenager
yeah.
would have to find somebody to yell at. And I kind of I sympathize with you, but then I also understand where they just have to get on a keyboard and just say something to somebody. you know?
Oh, I try to never get bothered by anything, and I
Yeah.
always answer questions genuinely. I don't have any problem with answering questions because people are curious, and I have no problem with saying it. And honestly, it's not like that I do any research to know if it's a kid commenting, because there's a lot of adults that say weird comments too. So I'm like, I don't know, in my head, I kind of just shrug it off. I'm like, whatever. That person needed to do that for that whatever reason, Sometimes I'm like, do you feel better after that rude comment?
Yeah, yeah, or it's not a matter of that. I think it's also that some of these people need attention from somebody. They need to recognize something, or
Sure.
they're genuinely curious and they're trying to get your attention enough so that they think you're going to answer them by being curious. I don't think, I mean, I'm agreeing with you. It's a huge problem, Hannah. But what I'm also saying is I think there's a lot of ins, outs, and in betweens. It's a whole spectrum, as we said before, right? There's a
Yeah.
whole there's a whole long list of reasons why somebody would be doing that. And then, of course, you just have your trolls, people that get on there and
Yeah, I was about to
play.
say it's just kind of part of the social media gang. It's like if you start getting a following, you're inevitably going to get a random troll. It's part of it. You take the good with the bad.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I could tell jokes about that. I don't have any trolls. Not around here. No trolls. Thank you. But now that I'm saying that, I'll get a troll. So it is part of the culture. That's
Yeah,
always.
it is.
And
Yep.
some of the most prolific people and the other very subtle, I focus in my teaching in subtlety as a languages guy. I really focus because I'm also fascinated by language acquisition. So I focus on minute detail and the little things in life that matter. Not that you do or don't. I'm just saying that that's what I do. And I
Hmm.
think that the troll behavior online socially, I think that some of those people are trolls, and then others of those people are also trolls who will someday be very successful people because they're teaching themselves how to speak up and communicate. So it sort of goes in both directions. There's
Oh yeah,
there's
totally.
friendly
And
there's
there's going to be
friendly
people
trolls
that
and good
disagree.
trolls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
everyone, yeah, it has the right to their opinion. And if they disagree yeah, that's why, like, I try to not get bothered by anyone that said, like, I've gotten a comment of, like, this is not funny or whatever. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to please everybody. I mean, then you don't have to watch my videos. It's totally cool. I don't mind.
Right, right. I don't know. I mean, I don't know, but I say the same thing. I don't know which video it was. I mean, maybe it was funny. Maybe,
I don't
who
know.
knows? Maybe it was less funny. So you
Yeah,
never know.
sure.
And the other thing is humor is very subjective. So that's,
Subjective. Yep, exactly.
that's the other thing. What somebody finds funny and what I find funny or my parents find funny or what I found funny 20 years ago are two totally different things.
Oh, right.
Comedic.
Yeah, my kids don't find me funny at all. So it's
No, they
nice to hear
wouldn't get.
strangers say that, oh, you're so funny, really? Because my kids don't think I'm funny at all.
Well, but a child wouldn't understand the subtlety. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Depending on how old your children are, they wouldn't understand the subtlety and the self-deprecation and that type of thing.
Yes.
That's a very it's like a very advanced thing to understand of why it's funny. But that is all really, really, really interesting. Never mind about trolls. What were some of the really like if somebody were to ask you a question in on your TikTok or if they commented below, what was an example of some of the best comments? Or has anybody asked you a really good question that you really loved? Like what can you say about that?
Yeah, I love it when people ask, really genuine questions of like, how do you make these videos? Because I don't mind explaining how I do it. Everybody kind of has their own tips and tricks and stuff. I think some of the best comments I've ever received are as somebody saying, I have been losing my vision and I'm really depressed about it. And watching your videos made me laugh and made me feel a lot better about it. That to me, anytime I get a comment that's even somewhat portraying that sentiment, it means so much to me. And it is a very difficult process. And so if we ever can find, just a moment to laugh or any bit of levity, like our lives can be really serious and everyone's very serious sometimes. And, and I don't go around joking all the time in my daily life. But when I make these videos, it's my moment to stop and laugh. And so if anybody else like relates to that, those are my favorite comments. I absolutely love those comments.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are really good too, where people show genuine interest, and those are the most
Yeah.
interesting people where they show interest and active learning. Those tend to be the most intriguing comments of all. But
I agree.
it does depend. Yeah, yeah. Do you have a following of people that watch you like in other countries? Have you ever gotten a comment from another country?
Yes, I have. Now, of course, I can't think of. I had somebody stitch one of my videos, and she was German, and she was speaking German throughout the entire thing, but she was blind. Um, and I've had random people cross from Canada to the United States, and they'll say like, hi, I'm blind in Canada, and there was another person I think in India, and that's been really cool. And one person just recently messaged me and said that she was at her it was like a blind support group or whatever, and they were talking about content creators, and they had like a list of ones that they found and came across, and they watched a few videos of each one, and she was like, "You were in there." And everybody loved your videos. And she's like, so you made it all the way
Oh,
to, I think you said Utah. I was like, oh my God, that's so awesome.
it's cool. It's cool when you
Yeah,
get downloads from like different parts of the world, and then you stop and think, wow, like you're actually helping somebody in a different country. That's like
I
really,
know. It's so cool.
really, really inspirational. Absolutely. Yeah. The other funny thing too, I don't talk about downloads unless it's funny, but this is funny. This is both funny and true. Actually, this is both humorous and accurate. I was looking at my download chart, because when you're a podcaster, you have a chart that shows you your downloads, and it's a way that's what gives the show the power. It's how many downloads. That's what pushes it forward.
Hmm.
So this whole week, each day this week, I have like one download here, two downloads here, two. And then when we got to Christmas Eve, it said, 250 downloads. So I was thinking, wait a minute. Do you hear how, and now we can definitely turn this into a comedy routine. Do you understand how depressing that is? That means that your whole week, you were so miserable about your lives the entire week, you had to wait until Christmas Eve to sit at home in your bedroom pushing download 200 times? You mean your people's lives? But when you stop and think about that, think about how silly that is. You waited the whole week. I mean, that's really silly. And for the record,
Funny.
thank you. And thank you to all those 256 downloads on Christmas Eve. Thank you so much. But I want to know, are you okay?
Maybe they finally had a moment to rest. I don't know. It's been pretty hectic.
Or the opposite. Or maybe they were really miserable the entire week and said, well, I have to allow my misery to compile and build up and build up and build up until all of a sudden Christmas Eve, it's Christmas Eve. Can't take it. Pour the eggnog, put on the podcast. Just can't take it
Yeah,
anymore.
there
That
you
must
go.
have been
It
what
could
it
go
was.
either way.
Now I'm really curious because I mean, if that happened to you, you would tell a joke about it too, and ask the same exact thing. What has been going on in your life that you were either so busy or so miserable you couldn't come to the podcast, and now on Christmas Eve, that's the day you choose? Like that is so cool. I wonder what that's about.
Yeah, I wonder.
Yeah, and I'm sure most of them were all blind people. Obviously, we have thousands of sighted people that tune in, but obviously they were all blind people on that one because
Hmm.
88%. You can also see like what source or app is being used to download the audio, and
Oh, that's cool.
let me tell you, 88% Victor Reader.
Oh, really? That's funny.
So on Christmas Eve, there must have been a whole large group of either really happy or really miserable blind people who said, I have nothing to do. Or maybe here's what it is. Maybe they live with families and all the families around the country gave them Victor readers for Christmas. And they said, here's your Victor reader. Go into that room and listen to a podcast. It's Christmas Eve. I don't want
Oh,
to.
that's a positive view of things. Yeah, maybe that's it.
I wonder what it is now. So it's the simple little things in life that now what I'm telling you about Christmas Eve downloads, it's true. And it's also very funny. I mean, you could do a comedy skit about that. You can
Hmm.
bend anything into comedy because you have to have the
Yep.
strength to laugh. Now, what I'm wondering is now that I said that out loud, I wonder what comments we're both going to get now. Like, I wonder if people will
Oh, I
come out
know.
of the woodwork like somebody in some town that I've never heard of. Yeah. Yeah. Hey man, it's me. Here's the Victor reader right here in my hand. Yes, that was me. Fine. You wanted to know. Um, yeah, I wonder. So, have you thought about getting into podcasting yourself? Because you also have, you're very fun to talk to. You have a lot to say. Have you thought about getting into the podcast circuit?
Thank you so much. That was
Yeah.
actually one of the avenues that when I was thinking about starting to make the videos, I had first thought about doing a podcast. But then it kind of intimidated me really. And I was like, I'm not sure if I have like the space, the equipment. I don't know anything about podcasting. I love to listen to them, but I don't really know the first thing. So it seemed kind of daunting to me. And I thought about it like maybe in the future. I, I don't know. Part of me, it's like, I cringe at my own videos. I don't actually like the sound of my voice. So then if it was like, just an audio
Hmm.
medium, I don't know. But it might be something in the future, especially as my little pinhole of vision is getting worse and worse. I'm kind of struggling with the editing process of my
Yeah.
videos, and I might need to move over into something a little bit more just audio.
Yeah. Well, your voice sounds great. And
Thank you.
you don't need much equipment. That's one misnomer about podcasting is people will tell you, here's all the different microphones you need, all this stuff. No,
Yeah, they do.
you just need a good microphone and a good tool to record your voice. That's all you need. The real trick behind it is anything else is marketing the material after it's there, but you don't need a lot to get
Hmm.
into it. So don't let that stop you. If you're able to do what you're doing now on Blind and Bored, you would be able to get into the podcast space. you
Yeah.
know
Thank you.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Have you let me see, I'm trying to think. Who have you ever, now, I mean, you do produce comical videos, but have you spoken to the other blind comedians? Because there are several blind comedians, one of which I interviewed, and I've interviewed him before. um I've interviewed comedian See No Evil before. He's also like you. He's at a, do you know who it is?
I think so. That sounds familiar.
Yeah, yeah, he's a great friend here at Aaron's Opinion, and I've interviewed him. There's other blind comedians. So, have you interviewed or have you ever spoken to any of the other blind comedians about your content?
I haven't. And one that I follow, I don't think it's that one. Sometimes I forget names. But he's a stand-up, so he does he shows videos on TikToks of his stand-up. And people have said, "Have you ever thought about doing that?" I was like, I don't think I'm brave enough for that. I don't think I could get in front of a crowd and try to tell jokes. And I think I'm a lot more like sketch comedy kind of
You
person.
are.
And I would love to be like a writer on SNL in another life. You know what I mean? I feel like I could do that, but yeah, stand up is definitely not my avenue. No, but I would love to talk to blind comedians because I feel like we'd have a lot in common.
There are several. There are several, and they're all very interesting people. I'm glad you mentioned the writing, because what a comedian is what the true act of comedy is translating your writing into things that
Hmm.
sound funny. So it's not
Exactly.
about saying, what other comedians have told me when I interviewed them is, it's not about saying funny things. It's about saying serious things funny.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
what it is. So,
Yep.
like you could take my whole, I could do a whole stand up about Christmas Eve, turn it into, at the end, you say like, thank you for listening. I'm glad you're a listener, and then at the end I would say, wishing them a happy Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all that, so I could do a whole stand up about that, right? Where first you self deprecate and say, oh, you're so miserable sitting at home in your bedroom listening to podcasts on Christmas Eve. Wow, that's pretty low. But then you end it by saying, that you appreciate that at least they chose to listen to you. So you kind of have to like
Yeah.
deflect the humor in different ways to make it completely go all the
Well, and I'm
way.
also all about timing, the way I say things, and anytime anyone like compliments my comedic timing, I do work at that. Sometimes it doesn't always come naturally. I will think about a skit before I record it, and I will sometimes record it saying it in several different ways, and then I'll watch it back or I'll listen to it back, and one of them will be the right one. And I'll just know when I hear it, I'm like, nope, that's the right timing. That's the right pace of what I was saying. A lot of comedy is about timing and the way you
All of
say
it.
things. Yeah.
All of it is.
So,
All of it is. And if you study the greatest comedians right now, you would also notice that they're really good writers. So if you want to be a comedian, if
oh
you want to
yeah.
be able to do that, well, let me see what you can write, because it's more about how do you translate written thought into funny stuff.
Exactly.
and social observations, there's a lot of that. So, let's kind of break that down. What if you have a line in your mind where you said, now let's imagine that it was your line. Oh, you waited until Christmas Eve to listen to my podcast, right? What are three different ways you could say that where you would try to make it funny? I'm just curious. Like, I'm just going to put you on the spot.
Oh,
And the line is, you waited until Christmas Eve to listen to my podcast. What are three different funny ways you could say that?
man, that's hard. That's hard. You just put me on the spot here. My mind is blanking right now. I'm sorry.
If you wanted to use this material, you could say, you waited until Christmas Eve to listen to my podcast. That's one,
Yes,
jab at it you could take. But there's a lot of different ways that you can say things. And the other subtlety about humor in the blindness community is if it's even a little bit funny, it's really funny. But if it's not funny at all, it's not funny. It's a very subtle thing.
Yep, it is. It's writing that line too. And I always say that when I'm trying to come up with a new skit, or sometimes when people suggest a skit to me, I'm like, that's kind of making fun of blind people, and I'm not doing that. I'm not trying to do that.
Well,
And
what
I'm
if
not
I
trying
do
to
agree
offend
with you?
other people.
I agree. What have they suggested? What's an example of something that somebody suggested that you
Um,
didn't do? Yeah.
It's like if there's a joke, I can't think of anything specific. If there is a joke that is insinuating that the blind person doesn't know something, that is coming from a sighted perspective, and I don't like it. Um, to where like insinuating that the blind person is oblivious to what is happening around them. And I don't like those jokes. Like, say a person holding up their hand and doing a hand gesture or something in front of the blind person, and then the blind person doesn't know what is happening. I'm like, I personally don't find that funny, because that's then, that's making fun of a blind person. That's not from a blind person's perspective, because I could switch that around and, you know, make a joke from the blind person's perspective, because I don't like it from the opposite, because then it seems like, yeah, you're making fun of blind people, not trying to be relatable on what it's like to be blind, because that's where I'm trying to come from, is to be
I,
relatable to the blind community. Yeah.
right, right. I wonder if you could make any jokes to a sighted person about them not understanding Braille. There's a lot of
Oh
weird stuff you
yeah.
could do about
Oh,
Braille
a lot of
too.
stuff that sighted people don't understand, or that they suck at, or that d- a constant joke, because it's with my family and stuff, is that I find things quicker than any of my family does. They don't seem to use any of their other senses very well, and I call it sight reliant disorder. So I have a couple videos about that, of people that have sight reliant disorder, and then they won't use their hands to find something, or they won't use their sense of smell, or whatever. Yeah, there's a lot of things that sighted people do like that I think blind people are way better at.
Absolutely, absolutely. What was somebody looking for, a watch or a ring or something like
Something in
that,
the
or
fridge. My son like couldn't find the mustard in the fridge, and I was like, the mustard has a very distinct shape, and he was not like using his hands to push anything aside. I literally just reached my arm into the fridge and felt around in the back and found the mustard bottle. Like,
hmm
that's it. That's all you had to do. And he was standing there just staring at the fridge, and he's like, I can't find the mustard. I'm like, what? So I made a video about that.
That is pretty funny so how old are your children?
They range from 9 to 19. So
Oh,
my oldest
yeah,
is home from for winter break, and he's in college. And then I have a teenage daughter, and then a 13-year-old son, and then my youngest is 9.
yeah. Well, your oldest, what are they studying in university?
Finance, which is
Finance.
what my husband does. So yeah, he's following his dad's footsteps.
I always think, not to create a stereotype for blind people or not, but I always think finance and financial planning is so fun. That is such a great
Really?
career. Yeah, yeah.
And that's the
Um,
opposite of my brain. Like, my husband has the complete opposite brain of me. I can't relate to it.
it's about helping people, and if you're a really good financial planner for somebody, you can help them, and you can have peace of mind in knowing that you're doing the right thing. So that's what it's about. It's a lot of fun. It's really, really cool. Yeah, yeah. What does your 19-year-old want to do in the financial sector?
I don't think he's really decided on that just yet.
That's
I think
fine.
he's kind of
Yeah.
feeling it out. He's in his first year, so yeah, he's still figuring that stuff out.
Yeah, well, that's good. I mean, I don't think. I mean, I'm sure you have obviously you have a probably pretty direct opinion. I don't think I think college is great. I hold a bachelor's in international relations. That's my academics,
Mhm.
And I also think that, on one hand, I would say college is a necessity and is a really good idea for people with disabilities. And on the other, I would tell anybody else, if you don't go to college, it's not the end of the world.
Oh,
There's
I've
a
said that to all of my kids. Yeah. And I said, if you're going to go to college, then you need to have some kind of degree plan that you can get a job, because
That's the
I
problem.
didn't want the don't go to college just for the sake of going to college. You need to have some kind of plan. Yeah.
That's kind of why, and I don't really want to say this, although I'm saying it. I don't want to portray it as we shouldn't go to college because we don't know what
Oh,
we
yeah.
want to do
Yeah.
after. No, certainly not. But I see what you're saying too, where you would think, well, if you don't know what you want to do, why should you go to college? I'm not convinced that it's a necessity. I'm just convinced that it's a less bad idea. You know, as I
Yes.
as I tell people, there's not good ideas. You see, there's no good idea. There's bad ideas, really bad ideas, and less bad ideas. Um, you
Well, and
know,
I've said to my kids too, if you want to go into like a trade service, I'd be full support about that.
I
There's so
wish
many
more people,
jobs where,
you know what the joke is
yeah.
about that? You know what the joke is? The joke's on them, years ago, I lived with my parents and brother, and I don't know, years ago, a light bulb, burnt out or something broke in the house. And, and my mother tells my father, you should hire a such and such. And he says, well, we can't afford that. Those people make way too much money. You want a good electrician to come out to your home. You want a good plumber. Well, hopefully you have money because those people are expensive. Those people make great money. So
Yeah.
I would tell anybody, blind or sighted, if you want to do
Yeah.
trades, my thing with trade school, if you want to do trade school, do it, but make sure that you love it. Make sure that you really want to be doing that job for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
You can make a lot of money. You can make millions, but you have to be really dedicated and you have to really want to do it every day. That's kind of the
Hmm.
problem. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, I don't know. What I'm hearing now is that more and more blind people are having a really time with universities and are really not going to trade school anymore either. So it's kind of a problem in both directions. But yeah,
Mm.
yeah, I don't know. We need to bring back the trades to some,
Yeah.
to some extent. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, that's all really interesting, really, really, really fun and really fascinating. So what are some questions you have for me? I'm sure that you have a lot of questions for Aaron Richmond, Aaron's opinion. I really do appreciate how well you've received me. I hope that you understand that with all my controversial opinions over the years, I'm not always warmly welcomed. And I do want to acknowledge that you were very, very warm and open to me. So that's kind of interesting and weird, actually. What was it about me that made you so willing to come to the podcast so quickly? Just curious.
I'm pretty open to whatever, and like when I'm invited onto anything, I think that they're fun. So, your message was very nice, and you have a very nice voice. So that's
I appre
basically what I
There
what
you
I
go.
was
You like my
on.
voice.
So
You
I was
like the
like, yeah,
audience.
your
Yeah.
voice sounded good. So I was like, you probably do a nice podcast. So I mean, as I said,
Glad to
I've
know.
only listened to like 3 episodes, but I did
That
also
means
find that
that means the
you
world to me.
okay, thank you, that you did interview Roy Samuelson, which I
He's
know
great.
him, and I've been on his podcast, so I was like, oh, okay, well, if he was on it, then it should be good.
There you go. Or we'll say, well, if you were on it, if Blind and Board's on it, then it's definitely good. Yeah. Well, that's really good. Yeah. So what are some questions you really want to ask me though, to really dig under my skin, to
um
really know about my journey?
well, to
Yeah.
keep with the comedy thing, is there anything that's happened to you with blind related that you've laughed at, or that you've turned into something that you can laugh at?
I guess are you asking me if I've had life experiences that really hurt me that I turn into comedy to
Even
like
if just in your own head, have you been able to laugh at yourself, or is that not your coping mechanism?
sort of, no, yes, I don't know, in between. And here's what I mean. It depends because I've been hurt and embarrassed and humiliated in public, like in several different ways, like really badly, and those I don't laugh at. So
Hmm.
there's certain jokes that I can't tell. There's certain things I just can't stomach or just can't make fun of. So the difference is the other thing you didn't know about me that most of my listeners do know, that I was kind of, to be a little bit malicious, I was kind of taking advantage of you for a second. You didn't even realize I was doing it. I'm actually Jewish. So
Oh, okay.
I was actually making a Merry Christmas joke about that because Jewish people like to tell social jokes about Christmas, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
see, you didn't know that. I was kind of creating a shtick, kind of creating a skit about that, you know. But you know, I think with me, it depends on how bad. In my case, it's a really hard thing to intellectually answer because it's a really complicated question. In my case, there have been some stuff that, even though I'm a man and a man with, I'm not going to lie to you at all, and I never have and never will. I'm a man with overly traditional conservative views, so it's harder for me to say this. But there have been some times where I have been really hurt by other people, and those times are times where I'll never joke about it because I don't feel right joking about it. There's
Mm-hmm.
other times where I have been really hurt by somebody in the past, but I have the humility to realize that they're also really hurt by themselves. And then I can joke about that. So ultimately, it's all a matter of subjectivity, right? You
Yeah.
will eventually put out a video that will upset somebody. You know, you
Oh,
will
totally.
hurt,
Yeah.
you know,
Yep.
because why? It's at somebody's expense, you know, right? Um, you know, I could,
Relate to it
yeah,
and they can't laugh at themselves about it because again, I am only laughing at myself. So I'm self-deprecating, I'm laughing at myself. So if somebody relates to one of my videos and this same thing happened to them but they can't laugh about it, they're still really upset about it, that I totally understand, and everybody has to deal with things their own way. I Humor is my personal coping mechanism, so I'm
absolutely.
only doing stuff based on my own experiences.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, but I love watching comedians and love that whole art form. I think it's a really complex thing, you know,
It is, yeah.
comedy and humor. And the reason why it holds true to this very day is because it's complicated. It's a really deep art form, you know, the art
Exactly.
to be able, be able to laugh at things. And then you go home if you're watching, you know, comedy or even if you're just sitting in your office watching it, you know, you stop the video and you say, oh my God, you know, I absolutely cannot say this when I go meet this person in real life. Or now I'm going to watch this, but I'm not going to repeat it. You know, so that's part of the joke too, is stomaching stuff that you can't say yourself, but it's great if somebody else can get away with saying it too.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that
exactly.
too, that too. Yeah. What else do you want to know?
How long have you been doing the podcast?
Well, so it all started around the same time as Blind and Bored, around 2020. But
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed it hasn't really started to take hold until now. You know, it takes years, as you're noticing. It takes many years to build a product, to build the platforms, to build the socials. That takes a long time actually for that to kick in. You know, so yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that is interesting.
yeah. That's
Well, so far, so since you've been doing it, I'm going to put you on the spot now.
absolutely.
Maybe call somebody out. What has been the most interesting conversation, besides me, obviously? What has been the most interesting conversation that you've had?
Every conversation is the most interesting because each
Oh,
conversation is a chance for me to learn something else.
yes,
I
that's true.
mean, this is a fun conversation. Like, we're not talking about, you know, going to prison. I've talked about that on the show. We're not talking about drug use. I've talked about that on the show. We're not talking about, you know, people dying. I've talked about that. You know, comedy aside, you don't want to be the most memorable. That's not necessarily good. If you're memorable, it doesn't mean it's happy.
Not
So
always positive. Yeah,
so
that's
just
fair. That's fair.
just because you're right now, just because you're an unpopular blind comedian now, it doesn't mean you won't be popular in the future, you know.
Thank
So
you.
you shouldn't worry about stuff like that. You should keep doing you and trying to reach out to different interesting characters along the way. Again, I commend you for putting out the reels. Until I saw the reel, I don't know which one it was, off air or on. I don't know which reel I saw where I noticed you initially,
Hmm.
but I don't know. You got to go talk to your publicist, but your social media presence is, I mean, I didn't notice until then. So whatever happened in the algorithm, I didn't notice until that point. I never knew there was a blind and board until that moment a couple weeks ago. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you found me.
Well, I'm glad too. It's a deeply fascinating thing. So some other questions. Yeah.
Um, I'm sorry, my mind is blanking right now. Is there anything you want to share?
Sure. So, okay. So
Oh, you
basically,
said you're a teacher. Tell me about
yeah.
that.
Well, so I teach English as a second language online.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, one of my other topics that I'm really into is like learning languages and language acquisition. So that's one of my other things. I've been trying to get more linguists to come to the show. But linguists and language people are really hard to talk to sometimes, believe it or not.
Oh,
Um,
really?
they tend to be the people that tend to be multi and bilingual people tend to be people that are very shy. So they tend to entertain their brain by learning other languages, but they don't always want to talk to other people. So
Yeah,
that's a very oddity too. Yes. So that's one of
that makes
my,
sense.
yeah. Most of my students are people that need to learn English so that they can leave their country or get a better job. So there's a lot of
Hmm.
people, I mean, we might have hard lives as blind people, but there are people in this world who have it just as bad as us. And there are people in this world who truly have it way worse. So,
Yeah.
and they're sighted. So you never know.
Yep. You never know. So true.
So what are your hopes and aspirations for Blind and Bored moving forward in the future? What do you think?
I just want to keep doing what I'm doing. I love any time that I'm on a podcast. I might one day start one. I like doing any kind of public speaking. I've spoke at two Lions Club
I'm in the
meetings.
Lions Club. Love it.
Yeah.
Lions are great.
Yeah, they've
Wonderful
been really
organization.
my in-laws are in the local Lions Club, and I really enjoyed that. So I think I might join them at some point.
Please do.
Um, and I would like to have more public speaking engagements. I think do see myself doing that more in the future. Other than that, I'm still just doing the day-to-day stuff. I'm still a stay-at-home mom, so I'm just making the videos kind of for my own entertainment and hoping anybody else likes them.
Right. Right. Well, that's really good. That's really good. By the way, one final question from me,
Hmm.
because we have to end on a laugh. So I have glaucoma. Why are you not joining glaucoma groups on Facebook?
Oh, I mean, there's so many. There's so many eye conditions. So I really have only joined the ones, the one
Oh,
that it's my eye condition.
I mean that kind of makes you seem kind of discriminatory. I mean, are you
Well,
sure
it's more
you?
of that I joined it to relate, or I wanted to ask questions about this exact problem. Yeah. So when other people, I did make a video of people describing like what their vision is like. And there's a lot of people on there that describe their glaucoma. And I it's a whole other thing, and I can't personally relate to it, but it's so
Hmm.
fascinating the different kinds of eye conditions there are and
There
the
are.
different ways that it manifests itself, and even the same thing of me having cone dystrophy. There's a bunch of people in the group that they see way better than I do, and they don't have some of the same issues that I do, but then some of them have a lot of the same issues I do. It's very fascinating.
I see. I see. Well, good. Well, that's really good. Really, really, really great. All right then. Well, very good. I'll ask this one final question, and then we'll go to the contact and the close. So, if you can ask me only one more question, what do you really want to ask? Do you have any final questions?
Where do you see the future of your podcast?
Keep going. Keep podcasting. Keep networking, building the network, and keep helping people. One of the most important things that I've noticed about Aaron's opinion is that it's obviously helpful because more people are listening. So that's obviously a clue that
Yeah.
somebody does care, and that's a very subtle point of advice I can give to you. If you think people don't care, look at your numbers and see if they're slowly going up. Slow increases show that people truly do
What
care.
I really do like about your podcast, even just the three episodes, is that, you're interviewing people from all different walks of life and different backgrounds and different jobs and I appreciate that of, you know, someone that you don't really think about how, say, maybe low vision would affect or being blind would affect them in that particular walk of life or that particular job. And, it's a lot of learning from all different perspectives.
You're so kind. Thank you so much. Yeah,
No problem.
I really do appreciate that. Absolutely. Blind and bored, Hannah, it's been an absolute honor to have you on the show. Truly has.
Thank
If
you for
somebody
having
wants
me.
to get in touch with Blind and Bored, how can you be reached?
I have a Facebook page, Blind and Bored. I am on YouTube, a YouTube channel. I'm on Instagram, Blind and Bored. If you type in Blind and Bored, you're going to find me on all of the things.
Well, good, but what if I'm not bored? Then what?
Well, I don't know. Entertain yourself some other way. I mean, maybe I'm not the right person to watch this.
There you go, everybody. Please don't be bored. Just be blind and bored. She's blind and bored. I'm Aaron's Opinion. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll be back soon. And of course, until next time, everybody, have a wonderful day. Keep downloading, keep enjoying it. And until then, help one person today, help 1 million people tomorrow.